个当. Welcome to my channel. So today we're going to talk about two topics. One is the idea of Chinese staring at foreigners, and the other is going to be about kind of how the volume changes from low to high in China, that people are louder than we're usually normally used to in the US. So first off, welcome back, and this is kind of my first channel that I'm going to talk about certain topics instead of just my self-introduction. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Chinese staring at foreigners. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about my own experiences in China first. So when I first got there, usually it actually didn't happen in just one or two contexts. It was kind of all around the city. So it often happened in subway systems, on the train, in a restaurant, even in my dorm. People would often stare at me, and I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know if it was that they didn't like me or they had some kind of thoughts about my culture or whatnot. But actually, it has nothing really to do with that. Even though I was studying in Beijing, I did travel to several other places in China, and these places were pretty rural, and really there were very few foreigners located in these places. So just a heads up that in Beijing and Shanghai, they're very international cities now, and you'll see a lot of international or foreigners in general there working and studying. So it might not be so much of a common thing there for Chinese to stare because they're used to seeing foreigners. But if you go to the south or any kind of smaller city or a rural town, people really will stare at you because there are very few foreigners in those locations. So you might kind of at first be like, well, why is everyone staring at me? It's not because they don't like you, it's because they're not used to seeing you, and they might want to get closer with you and take pictures of you and ask you where you're from, say hello. They want to get to know you and see different faces they're not used to seeing. So if they ask you, do you want to take a picture with me? If you don't want to take a picture with them, you can say 不好意思, which means I'm sorry, I don't want to take a picture with you. And just, walk away kindly. You don't have to storm off and be angry with them. If you'd like to take a picture, that's okay as well. It's totally up to you. But they're just curious, and they want to get to know you a little bit better. You might need to add a couple of Chinese terms in there because some Chinese are not able to express their thoughts in English. So that's something you can keep in consideration. So those are kind of the main points here that you need to keep in mind, and don't misunderstand them. It's not that they don't like you, it's that they're not used to seeing foreigners, and they're interested in our culture, and they want to get to know us a little bit more. And if you'd like, you can take a picture with them if they're willing to do that. So the second thing I'd like to talk about now is that we're not so much used to a group of people or friends together being very loud. The volume of speaking is much louder than we're used to in the US. Usually when we're eating out, going to the movies, people might, stay at a kind of normal volume because they think that's polite. When I first got to China, it was very alarming. So I was in my dorm, and the people working in the desk up front, they were talking and talking at a very kind of loud voice, and I was like, these people must be really angry with each other. And I would tell my friends, and they're like, yeah, I think so too. And I got to listen more and more, and once I became more proficient in the language and I actually understood what they were saying, that wasn't the case. They weren't mad at each other. It was that they were excited and enthusiastic with what they were talking about. So that's the difference here. But just, so that's kind of my first-hand experience with this. And just kind of, when I first got there, how it was and how I view it now. So what you want to keep in mind is that, and again, just like what I was saying before, as Chinese people, when they are out and about staring at you, it can be in different places, right? It's not just centered in one place. The same goes with people being loud. It can be at a restaurant, it can be before the movie starts, it can even be in the shopping mall. So anywhere you can really think of. And it's their way of being enthusiastic with each other and showing that they have a good relationship and they're getting along with each other well. But you don't want to think about it in a way that is kind of just. So what I'm trying to say here is that we're used to places being quiet, like the library. Let's say, at home before your parents go to sleep, or your significant other is going to sleep. You consider that more, right? You take in consideration people that they're studying or they're trying to go to sleep, so you try to keep the volume down. The same applies there. So while in certain places we speak at the same volume, they might speak at a louder volume than we do. But places that we're used to being quiet, that also applies to in China. So don't misunderstand this here. So in China, at the library, you will see people keeping quiet, just like in the US. So it's not something that you will see everywhere. Expect that the places that need to be quiet will also be quiet. And this can also happen in meeting areas or places where you meet your colleagues beforehand. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to go over in this video today. I hope this was helpful. Again, so we talked about Chinese people being loud, but only in certain areas and not areas that we're used to being quiet. Okay, and then the other thing we talked about is people staring at you. Again, so don't misunderstand this as being something that is offensive. It's that they're interested in us and they want to maybe take a picture, and if you'd like to take that picture with them, go ahead and do it. If you don't, you could say 不好意思，谢谢。